Um, ICDC is, first of all, I'm sure you understand that ICDC is a development finance institution, the oldest DFI in Kenya, established way back in 1954, with the aim of helping the government meaningfully intervene in the growth and development of the private sector. And ICDC was originally meant to mobilize financial resources and make them available to private sector entrepreneurs, and businesses. And the organization has been fairly successful in that regard. So its vision remains to be, a premier DFI in Africa, and its mission is really to grow the wealth of our people by helping them realize their entrepreneurial dreams. Well, when you go back to ICDC's early history, practically every successful business organization in this country, particularly from the pre and post-independence era, are associated with ICDC. You think about the companies like General Motors, East Africa. ICDC was a founding shareholder of that. Uchumi Supermarkets, ICDC was a founding shareholder of that. The likes of Firestone, companies such as Aeon Minet, which used to be called Minet ICDC in the old days, and many others. Centum is another good example. Again, a company that ICDC started quite a while back and has gone on to become fairly successful. In recent years, we've a few companies that we've also started, but those are not yet household names. But we're hoping to make them household names, and we're hoping that they will be spoken of in the same breath in years to come as we speak, of the companies that I've talked about. One is a company called Focus, CFS. This is a container freight station that it's based in Mombasa. ICDC has a shareholding in. We're currently in the process of putting up a food processing factory in Malindi, in partnership with some private sector operators. We've invested in a small power company in Mount Kenya region called Power Technologies. The company that was recently named first in the top 100 Lean Energy Solutions is a good client of ours. So these are some of the examples. We like to think that that's actually one of the key differentiators between a DFI and, for example, a more conventional provider of finance such as a commercial bank. Because the DFI's mandate is not so much to make money as to facilitate the birth and growth of these organizations. And so therefore, our first imperative is to ensure that even when they go through difficulty, and companies will invariably go through difficulties, especially in the early stages. But our job is to try and see if we can come up with interventions that will help the companies get over that difficult phase and come out the other side, stronger and stable. And you find that it is a cycle. It's a business cycle, and once they get to a certain point and beyond a certain stage, then those companies are there to stay. They're there for the long haul. KENATCO, first of all, I think is doing all right. Is doing as well as can be expected. It obviously plays in a fairly difficult sector now. Not difficult so much as competitive, because as you rightly say, it's a sector that has seen many entrants come in. KENATCO's challenge is not that it is not operationally and financially viable. KENATCO's challenge is actually that it's to this day it carries a lot of legacy issues. Debts from back when it had problems, and those debts have not gone away because they grew to unsustainable levels. But when you sort of strip away those legacy issues, then you actually find that you have a good company, a company that at an operational level is profitable. And so what we're trying to do is again nurse it along. We've asked the government to allow us to restructure that debt and hopefully to write off some of it. And that would therefore allow KENATCO the breathing room that it needs to to run and compete. You find that today Kenatco, for example, cannot buy cars, so it operates a leasing model, which the efficiency of that is debatable. So if it had the freedom, and the reason it does that is obviously because it's challenged financially. But if it had the freedom to choose purely based on commercial considerations and commercial sense, then it might actually enhance its business model. But that notwithstanding, I believe that you actually have a sound company there, and once we've resolved the issue of how to deal with particularly the legacy debt that has been brought forward for many years, then you actually have a company that we will be looking forward to privatize, perhaps through calling in a strategic investor or the like. If you got that approval tomorrow, then actually you'd have a company that's ready to go private the day after. Yeah. Let me start by saying that about 2 years ago, ICDC launched a new strategic plan. And in that plan, we actually identified the coming of, this was just shortly after the promulgation of the new constitution. And we identified the coming of the counties as a huge opportunity for us and obviously for the country. And so when you actually go into a strategic plan, you will find that we've identified county governments as a key client. And so what we are hoping to do is get into win-win partnerships with the county governments. We have seen quite a few of them embark on fairly aggressive and fairly ambitious development plans, and those plans are largely modeled on the PPP model, on the public-private partnership model, and that is the area that ICDC likes to play in, because our expertise is bringing together our money with private operators, and so when you look, for example, at the project we're doing in Malindi, the Kilifi government has taken a very keen interest and has indicated its willingness to facilitate through organizing farmers, perhaps allocating more land should it be required, and the like. And these are the sort of conversations we're hoping to be having with the various county governments. We've seen the Homa Bay County also go out to the market to call for feasibility studies for the establishment of factories in various areas, and again, we're taking a very keen interest in seeing how we can participate. Secondly, there's obviously the purely private sector driven initiatives. Today, if you look at our deal pipeline, we have projects there, project proposals in there from across the country, and those are not they're not being pushed by a government, but rather by private sector operators. Like I mentioned earlier, we for example have invested in a power production facility in Mount Kenya. The logic for the location of that project was purely that it's a hydro project, and it was basically a location-driven initiative. When you look at the lean energy that I talked about, they have an operational base in Western Kenya because they use sugar molasses to make into briquettes. So again, they need to be where their key input is. So it's a question of looking at what makes sense to put where, depending on the factors that determine the success, or viability of a project. What you will find is that the older generation have a very good understanding of what ICDC used to do and what ICDC used to stand for. But there was admittedly a gap of about 15 to 20 years when ICDC went quite quiet. And therefore, there's been that disconnect with the market. We started to address that about 2 years ago when we rebranded and relaunched the corporation. And we've seen a good response. We obviously can do more. And the feedback we've gotten from customers, for example, and we've been doing, brand equity surveys, customer satisfaction surveys. A lot of the feedback we've gotten is that yes, we're doing good work, but we need to create more awareness, and therefore that is something that we're working very hard to address. And I believe again in the coming days, more and more people will see more and more of ICDC, because as we try and ramp up our marketing activities, outreach. Last week we spent most of the week at the coast, in Kilifi and Mombasa, and we want to drive that sort of initiative to other parts of the country. I would say that ICDC is not a mass operator. If you look at our product, because again you have to go back to our offering. What do we offer? We offer financing that is used for the establishment of and growth of businesses. Now that therefore means that you're really targeting the business class, and I think we know by definition that not everybody is a business person, and therefore is a consumer of our products. Then when you even get into the business segment, it's even more refined, because again we have a fairly clear-cut client, a clearly defined client. We look for young businesses. Again, we realize that where we are needed the most is by businesses that are in their sort of early stage and quick growth stages. So we're not interested in companies that have sort of gotten over the growth challenges and are now fairly well established, are well capitalized, have a good balance sheet, and therefore can get financing from conventional providers. We're more interested in those customers that have good ideas, good business ideas, but are challenged because they, for one reason or the other, will not access financing from conventional providers of finance. And so you're looking for people who, for example, have collateral challenges, whose projects are fairly long-term in nature, because you will find that the banks, for example, are fairly short-term oriented. You will find projects that maybe have very strong socioeconomic benefits, so for example, creation of jobs and the like, but are not as profitable as, say, a bank or a private investor might like. And so therefore ICDC comes in to support clients like those. So that typically would be the sort of client. We also believe that we have a role to work with foreign investors looking to play in Kenya. You find that there's a particular class of foreign investor who derives a lot of comfort from partnering with a government-oriented institution, and we therefore would normally get in partnerships with people like those. The 4 DFIs are sectorally focused. That is the main differentiator. So you've got ICDC, renowned for its work in the industrial and commercial sectors. You've got KTDC, which has now rebranded itself, but mainly working in the area of hospitality and tourism. You've got the AFC, Agricultural Finance Corporation, working in the area of agriculture. KIE, which also works in the area of industry, but is very specialized. It's focused on the very small. It's an incubation service, and then IDB, which then has a bit of an overlap with ICDC, but tends to focus more on debt than provision of equity.
Okay, what's the ownership structure for ICDC?
ICDC is wholly owned by government, so it's owned by the National Treasury through but it's under the parent, the Ministry of Industrialization and Enterprise Development.
And therefore aligned to Vision 2030.
Correct. When we, for example, went back to the drawing board and developed a current strategic plan, the heavy focus was on how could ICDC be more relevant to the Vision 2030 agenda. And therefore, the sectors that we identified that we wanted to focus on were those that had been earmarked as well in Vision 2030 as sectors that would make the difference for the country. So manufacturing, agribusiness, education, financial services, these are our primary sectors of focus. And secondarily, we're investing in wholesale and trade. We're investing in energy, and I've mentioned a couple of projects in energy. The healthcare sector, because I think healthcare is key to a country's development, and again has been identified under Vision 2030 as a key sector. But over and above that, we are also an implementing agency for our parent ministry, and and the ministry has been charged with certain projects, delivery of certain projects, flagship projects under Vision 2030. Now, one of those is the delivery of what are being termed as industrial parks. Under Vision 2030, the ministry is supposed to actually deliver 4. Now, one of those is being driven by ICDC in Eldoret. ICDC has a 135-acre plot in Eldoret, and we've identified that as a very ideal location for a value addition industrial park. We're in the process of conceptualizing that project and hopefully going through the feasibilities and business planning with the aim of launching that in the next 12 to 18 months. Well, I think our role is to be an ambassador for the country. And we're playing that role through participation in international conferences, for example, and helping to articulate Kenya's message that Kenya is a good place to do business and Kenya is ready for takeoff. I believe that that perception and that misconception is changing extremely quickly. The world now knows that Africa is the fastest growing continent and really is going to be the next frontier of economic development. And it is no accident that we've seen practically every big multinational make a beeline for Africa, whether it's in retail, in finance, in fast-moving consumer goods, in mining. Mining is a more traditional sector. They've been there, but more and more, and I think this is the thing that I think gives us the most satisfaction. We're seeing even consumer-focused businesses recognizing that, yes, there's actually a growing class of consumers that are profitable for these companies to target. And I believe it's changing. The message is going back, and more, we will only going to see that grow, the interest in Africa grow. ICDC itself is, again, in talks with various international investors who, again, have an interest in investing here. We're exploring ways of seeing if we can, conceive profitable partnerships, with these investors that will bring investment, create jobs, contribute to the production of, goods and services that can be sold outside and so on. Like you mentioned, corruption is always, I think, top of the list. Secondly, it's just the cost of doing business. And again, corruption is a big factor there. But the cost of doing business in terms of, infrastructure, for example, the cost of moving goods from point A to point B, the cost of bringing in materials. They have concerns around the friendliness of a taxation regime, and a lot of investors expressed the view that for a developing country, maybe could be more proactive in terms of tax concessions and benefits to some of these investors. Security is obviously a big issue, and every time there's one story or the other about a security incident in the country, it is magnified, unfortunately, out there, and it reinforces this perception that this is an unsafe place. But those are some of the key concerns. I think on the positive, most foreigners that I've met, or most visitors to Kenya that I've met, are very impressed by the quality of the talent pool that they find here, and the resourcefulness of the people. Our job is really to do it almost case by case. Is to identify an investment opportunity, see who would make a good partner, and then persuade them that there's a business case in them, coming here. We are not really well suited to be evangelical and to evangelize the message that Kenya is open for business. I believe the agencies, government agencies, that are better suited to doing that and whose mandate is precisely that. I think first of all is to say that ICDC, from the board and the management level, is quite deeply committed to running this organization in an ethical and in a clean manner, and I believe our track record speaks for itself. I think we have a fairly robust anti-corruption and ethics framework. One, we partner fairly closely with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and the framework that we have in place has actually been developed with their assistance. So we have what we call an anti-corruption committee that meets, that's comprised of the heads of department and meets at least once every quarter. What we have also done is identified, the areas of possible risk in terms of corruption across the organization. Handling of money, handling of customers, and so we review those areas fairly critically at these meetings and see what measures have been put in place to mitigate those risks, and are those measures working and working properly. And every head of department, every manager is accountable for results in the area. We have a code of conduct that employees must also sign, are required to sign, and again making them understand that they're expected to uphold the highest standard of ethics in the organization. We also have sensitization forums where again we invite the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to come and speak to us, speak to our people, and sensitize them on the need to be clean and to do business in a clean manner. We have a fairly robust ICT framework. We have an ERP system, and basically all of our core areas, all of our core business areas are run on that platform. And what it does is really enhance the visibility of what is happening. If it's, for example, the management of customer applications, they're very visible on a day-to-day basis on what is happening and who's responsible for managing what case and what's going on with that case. And people are required to report on a week-by-week basis on progress. The way we assess ourselves is we normally will split the framework into two. There are those things that are internally oriented and which we have absolute control over, and then there are those things that have to do with our with our ownership framework, and which are largely out of our hands because are determined by government. For example, PSGRS expects that the board should be independently appointed, but the reality is that, of course, that our boards are nominated by governors. So, for example, when we come to the scoring, we will lose marks on that. You have areas like autonomy of the institutions from government and so on, the freedom to make its own commercial decisions. So we will normally lose points there. But what we have done is focused on the more internally oriented aspects, issues to do with risk management, issues to do with operational efficiency, issues to do with financial management, and made sure that we are as compliant as possible. And I think in that area, I would probably say we are at about 85% compliance. So when you look at our weighted average, we are at about 65%. It's not where we want to be. Our aspiration is to be at about 80% against the total mechanism. But like I said, a big part of that is because of the factors that we really can't do too much about. There's an initiative currently ongoing now that has been sponsored by the Treasury, and that's the passage of a new regulatory framework for DFIs. That's it's called the proposed DFI bill. Now, the DFI bill proposes to overhaul the way in which DFIs are overseen and how they are regulated. Today, although the DFIs don't have a sort of centralized and formal regulatory mechanism, the fact that they are under parent ministries means that a lot of their autonomy is taken away. What the DFI bill proposes to do is free them up, professionalize the recruitment of boards of directors and management, and then leave them free to run their affairs on commercial principles. Of course, with accountability back to government through a proposed DFI authority. So, if that framework comes into being, it will actually address a lot of the factors that I said we don't measure, we don't score too well against. just as in previous years, I think it's to go and learn. The AADFI Forum has, in my experience in the last 3 or 4 years that I've attended, been extremely useful. Number one is in generating contacts of institutions that you can partner with in various areas, not necessarily to do business, but to share knowledge. We've, for example, we were lucky 2 or 3 years ago to generate a relationship from there with ICDC of South Africa, fairly successful DFI, and they've helped us in terms of again benchmarking, streamlining our processes by learning from them. As well, you have the bigger DFIs who come to the forum looking for partners with whom to work, on projects, on specific projects, and through provision of cheap financing. So again, we've been able to, just again out of the AADFI Forum, generate a relationship where we actually expect to benefit through a line of credit, a dollar line of credit from one of the regional DFIs. So that, and then of course, like I said, sharing knowledge. At the moment, there's a big topical issue around how DFIs are supposed to measure the social impact of their investment activity. And again, I'm looking forward particularly to this particular forum, to hearing more on, more discourse on that particular area. A community that is fairly enlightened and that understands, that those are issues that don't have too much to do with, with business and activities. But having said that, there's a certain element of uncertainty, of course, that things like this will breed about the country in general and the direction of the country. So the challenge that I see is particularly with regards to foreign investors and their perception, the adverse perception from this that maybe Kenya might not be an attractive place to do business. But of course, again, it is up to us to address those concerns and make it very clear that life goes on, work goes on, and the country goes on. Yeah, well, my experience is that the West in particular has woken up to the realization that the East is a big competitor, and so there's a realization that they must up their game and be more engaged, and that is what I'm seeing. A lot more activity, a lot more interest, a lot more of people coming into the country, and looking around and seeing, what is there to be done.